and CEO of MASH Project Foundation. And I'm very excited to be moderating today's panel discussion. Welcome to the Youth Collab Youth Booth session. Youth Collab was started by UNDP and Atal Innovation India Mission, Atal Innovation Mission of Niti Aayog, which partnered to strengthen the youth-led innovation and social entrepreneurship ecosystem through Youth Collab. So Youth Collab this year is focusing on how can we build forward better, especially in this current pandemic. There are some major areas that have been impacted, and as young people, which is about 50% of our country's population, we have some major responsibilities with us. Some of our friends, some of our fellow youths have been struggling in various ways, from mental health challenges to the job losses to unclarity on their future careers, right? So Youth Collab is a movement, is a initiative to bring youth-led leadership, youth-led innovation, youth-led ideas, and create solutions that's going to make breakthrough change. UNDP and Atal Innovation Mission believes that young people are the future, and empowering them, it's going to make a huge impact. Just to talk a little bit about Youth Collab, it was started in 2017 by UNDP Asia and the Pacific with the support of City Foundation. It's a multi-dimensional and a multi-level response to tackle the challenges of young people faced by which is faced by youth, and how can we address the UN Sustainable Development Goals through our innovative approaches. Today's Youth Booth series, the session is a part of the series, and it's a last Youth Booth session. And there have been multiple topics that have been covered as part of these Youth Booth sessions in the last few weeks, ranging from education to skilling, from gender to mental health, among others. And there have been some great response that is coming up from the fellow youth. So today's session is on access to services, and we have some amazing panel. I was just telling the panelists that I personally am quite excited to be moderating today's session because there is so much to learn from each one of them. And I've personally been following their work, and they're incredible, inspiring entrepreneurs. So there's so much to take back from this session. So I will really recommend you to just keep your phones, anything else that's kind of distracting you, to be away and make the most of the session. Let's make it interactive. Keep, sending us your questions, comments, and let's make the most of it. Before we go ahead, I would also like to introduce my fellow colleague, Nilanjana, who works with the Head Held High Foundation as the Community Engagement Manager, who will be also moderating with me. Nilanjana, over to you, please. Nilanjana, you're on mute.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Aashish. I'm really pleased to be here. And as we mentioned, this is going to be a very interactive session. Before that, I'll just quickly introduce everyone to our esteemed panel for today. We have Aniket Doegar, CEO and co-founder of Haqdarshsak, a social enterprise that connects citizens with their eligible welfare schemes. Aniket was selected for Forbes 30 Under 30 Asia. So far, Haqdarshsak as an organization has reached out to over 300,000 families, facilitating close to 500,000 applications, which has led to over 400 crores worth of benefits delivered to the citizens. Welcome, Aniket. Our second panelist is Antaraa Vasudev, founder of Civis, a platform which enables the government to understand citizens' priorities and gather their feedback on policy decisions in real time. We welcome you, Antaraa. Our third panelist is Prapti Bhasin, co-founder of Aafaaq Foundation. With their first intervention in Kihar Valley of Chamba district, Himachal Pradesh, Aafaaq envisions creating self-sustainable and autonomous communities via education and livelihood transformation in the most backward areas of the country. Very welcome to you, Prapti. And our final panelist is Apar Gupta, founder and executive director of Internet Freedom Foundation. Internet Freedom Foundation bridges the gap between the public and public policy and moves towards outcome-based advocacy that works with policy-making institutions such as courts, parliaments, government offices, and regulators. Welcome, a very warm and hearty welcome to all of you here. And now I'll hand over to Aashish for a very interactive session going from here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nilanjana. Without spending further time, let's get right into our panel. I would like to first start with Ankit. I have a question which is, as a fellow entrepreneur, I would like to ask any other entrepreneur, is the why behind what you do, right? And that's the biggest moving factor for all of us, right? So, Aniket, Haqdarshsak is one of the first Indian social enterprise to digitize the welfare programs on a single platform. So my first question is, how did you come up with this idea, and what was the key problem that you identified that led to creation of this platform?
So I actually looked at this idea during my work at Teach for India and subsequent foundations that I worked in. So everywhere that I looked at in the communities, rural and urban, one major gap that I saw was implementation of government schemes and essentially the kind of information gap that was there. Government is the biggest funder in India, and we have a billion people who are eligible for schemes out of 1.4 billion people. Some kind of schemes are documents, small businesses, ration, pension, all kinds. And the biggest gap that I saw was that people are not aware what they are eligible for because of the complex system and because of the different documents that are required. So that's how the idea came about. They said initially it was just meant to be a platform which helps citizens get access to the right information. But gradually, we realized that there is also a need for actual last mile service delivery. Without that support, it is not enough just to have a platform, and that's how Haqdarshsak actually came about as a social enterprise. Initially, it was just a non-profit, a separate entity. So we transitioned into a private limited social enterprise after testing multiple pilots on ground, different models on ground. Yeah, and that's how we started Haqdarshsak.
Aniket, I have a follow-on question. You said like we started with one thing, but then we realized there's a bigger problem, and then you kept building on top of it, right? So, when do you realize? At what point do you think what we're doing probably isn't enough, and we need to go step? Is it like constant feedback that you receive from your communities? Is it from the mentors, advisors? Like, at what point do you think we want to either pivot, or you want to evolve?
So I think what one I have realized, and this is in hindsight, I didn't have this clarity when I was actually starting out or initiating the organization. I think it's very clear. It's very important, sorry, to have a very clear vision and mission. What is the problem you're trying to solve? What is your vision? And then looking at the market situation, economy, things which have happened this year like COVID, keep pivoting and ensuring that you are very agile as an enterprise, as an idea. Don't get fixated with one kind of execution on how you want to go about it. That's very important. But I think at the same time, like I said, it's very important to have one written down goal, vision, mission. What do you want to do in solving the problem? You can't solve everything. So what is that one thing that you want to do which will ensure that one lever is pulled and there's a change that happens? But then, as we were going, we were very lucky to have some great mentors who helped us and guided us in making those quick pivots as and when it was needed. So I think that essentially helped us evolve and change.
So on mentors part, thanks for being so efficient. I can ask you more follow-up question. We have still one more minute with you. So on a mentor piece, do you think it's a good idea to have mentors at the beginning of the journey, or do you think as you evolve, roles of mentor change, or they should come later? What are your quick thoughts? Because a lot of people who are joining us today are working on an idea, or they plan to work on an idea. So at what, any like quick thoughts on role of mentors, and at what point you should engage what kind of mentors?
So mentors are like your teachers, right? They change every year. So there's no one constant guide or mentor for an organization. For an individual, you can have someone you look up to or somebody you engage with, but that necessarily isn't good or bad for your organization. For your organization, there needs to be constantly people at different stages. When you were at an idea stage, we were reaching out to and getting help from very different kind of people. When we were at the growth stage, and we are in the growth stage, at that time we are getting help and support from very different kind of mentors. So I think the role of mentors is critical at every stage for an organization, for an idea. And there are enough people out there. I think people, like I said, young people who are looking for mentors also, one thing is there needs to be very extreme clarity in, like I said, in your vision. You need to get the most out of your mentors and their time and their skills. But yeah, at different stages, I would say the role of mentors evolves and changes. Mentors themselves change. You don't necessarily need the same mentor at different stages of your organization.
Wonderful. As we'll come back to Aniket, I think there's so much more to learn from Haqdarshsak journey. I know you recently raised some funding as well, so congratulations on that. So would love to probably, or maybe I'll open it up for the audience if they would like to ask more. So now I would go to Antaraa. Antaraa, so very interesting work you do with Civis. I've personally seen a lot of campaigns and citizen engagement work that you've done through your platform. So tell us something about your journey. How did this idea come to you? And, at what point do you realize that I want to do something about this and give it in a shape like it is now currently? Yeah.
Right. Thanks, Aashish. So I think just the idea, I mean, the journey for me has been a lot of exploration and a lot of curiosity. I think I actually was working, I knew that I always had an interest in policy. So that was my sort of base interest. I had an educational background in policy. But beyond that, I also started realizing that there is a great influence and policy will continue to change with technology and with all of these new tools and with Twitter and the ability to communicate more effectively with governments, right? And I think that was like the small seed of curiosity that got planted, after which I started trying to figure out through different ways how this works. So I actually volunteered for an Argentinian nonprofit for about 2.5 years. I did a lot of reading. I was really kind of interested in understanding how we can ensure that there is constructive dialogue between governments and citizens, and more coming from the place that it's going to be so much more relevant as this generation of younger people grows up and is used to that sort of like participatory communication in different aspects of their lives, right? So I think for me, it was like a little bit of curiosity that just got me digging deeper. And as Aniket clearly also mentioned, that it's always good to have that vision of what you want to see, as well as a set of values of what you or how you think you want to solve that problem, right? And I think that is what has held us in good stead so far. Civis, as you see it today, is one version. It might change radically tomorrow. We have no idea at all. But the idea is that it's a process of evolution, and it's just about sort of maybe catching on to that one thing that catches your fancy and digging deeper.
Superb. Like you said something very interesting, and I could relate with very well. So when I was starting MASH, I had spent a lot of time working with youth groups, youth volunteers, trying to figure out what problem we solve. So it's very, like to a lot of aspiring young people who want to walk the path of entrepreneurship. It's good to get experience, and sort of varied experience, international experience, or be it like you work with grassroots communities. So, but at the point where you decided you want to do something of your own, you want to start an enterprise. So what was that, first step? Did you did you also get like talk to some mentors? You had an idea, you spoke to your friends, or did you go to an program like Youth Collab and pitched it there? So wanted to understand that, realizing a problem, getting an experience to starting up. So what was that bridge between those? Yeah.
Sure. So I think also over here, mentors played a really, really important role. Civis wouldn't have come into being until and unless we had some mentors actually talk to us and tell us that, hey, you know what, this is actually possible. Like you as an individual can actually maybe, try this out. And I think for me personally, I always knew that I wanted to do something that was a little bit independent. I didn't realize what it would take. It takes a lot, but I think that sort of interest was there to try different things. And I think the one thing for any young person who is trying to walk the path that I just share is that chances are things will work out, chances are things may not work out, right? But the experience, the richness of the experience you get in going through that process, as well as the friends that you make along the way and the networks that you build, you will have that safety net if things don't work out. So don't let that be the fear that kind of stops you from taking that first step. Take that first step, and the chances are that you're going to face like 100 different problems, but it's okay, because it's that first step that really does make the difference.
Very beautifully said. There's something I tell a lot of my, we work with a lot of young entrepreneurs, is that, I sometimes feel like that the first step is the biggest hurdle. When you cross that, then, I feel like universe takes that 2 steps for you, but you got to take that first step, right? Of course, the bigger hurdles also come later on, but it's worth the experience and worth the journey. So one more question before we move to the next panelist is in terms of, from an idea to shaping it into a enterprise, right? Like, so there are various components, right? So Aniket stressed upon mentors. You also briefly touched about mentors. What other important aspects from making idea to a tangible, platform, solution, prototype, product, whatever you call it, you think is very important, right?
Right. So I think a couple of things are really important. One is actually having a sort of multidisciplinary approach to the work that you do. It becomes really, really important to see how different threads of best practices from different domains can actually help you push the envelope with your work. That is one thing that I think is very important. The second thing, of course, go out there, talk to lots of people. There are lots of people who have tried to solve similar challenges that we have, and they have very valuable inputs. To be honest, I think for the first year of my sort of research phase, I call it my research phase with Civis, I was really just going out and talking to people and trying to understand what was not working. And then comes the solution of, okay, what can we do to fix this sort of problem? So I think going deep there's great value in going deep and really trying to understand and speak to different people. And of course, there are mentors, and the third thing that I wanted to share is that it's always so important to have that continuous learning hat on, because the work that we do takes different shapes, like Aniket also mentioned, depending on different circumstances that arise, right? So it's so important to know that you always have to keep evolving with the time, and your first idea or sort of first pitch may not actually be what you will end up doing 2 to 3 years down the road, but it'll solve for that core problem that you want to solve for. It's just that you have to keep an open mind to keep learning and reiterating and going over it till you find that final sort of solution.
Super, very, very well said. Antaraa, we'll also come back to you. I think there's so much, you touched upon something very important, is a multidisciplinary approach. And we've seen, I was part of a program with Ashoka University, and there were a bunch of, kids who were trying to solve problems, and they had like sort of a cross section of liberal arts, technology, mixed with the kind of literature. So it was so much that's evolving, and there is no one fixed way of looking at when you mean to startup. Great. So I'll now move on to Apar, who's the founder of Internet Freedom Foundation. As he said, he's a retiring, lawyer. So would love to hear from Apar about his journey and at what point he realized this is the problem he wants to solve. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me here. And there's so many wonderful organizers here. I think that it's due to their partnership we are listening to, and having people who are usually not lawyers. So it's great to be amongst friends rather than competitors. And I'd just like to tell you a bit that I entered law with a high degree of idealism and ambition towards social transformation and the value which law itself is an instrument of power. So it's actually very useful in terms of serving constituencies who have lacked this power in Indian society. And there's so many wrong accesses of gender, sexuality, religious identity, and linguistic, as well as regional diversity and caste. So India is always searching for new methods how to tackle this age-old problem. Now, thankfully, I always had an interest in technology, which is another transformational access alongside power, alongside law, to in fact bring greater amount of power to constituencies who have not had it. And when you bring both technology as well as law and sit both of them closely, very together, what you have is something which is really magical. You have the ability to transform society towards the better. And there were early experiences through litigation in courts, such as the Section 66A case. If you remember, there was a law which was used to very widely, criminalize online speech, jail people, even when they were just putting up social media posts. I was a lawyer in that. There was the net neutrality campaign, in which a lot of you sent emails to the telecom regulator. Close to 1 million people did. I was there. So I wrote those answers which were sent. And I hope people did read them rather than just copy pasting and sending them. So, what and I think that's a very tough problem which Antaraa is actually trying to solve alongside so many problems. So it goes towards showing that when you want to impact this kind of change, you need to step beyond the courts. You need to actually take off the lawyer band, and you need to grow an organization actually which can sustainably address these issues across different verticals of governance. And at the same point of time, make people realize that the technology and the smartphones that they hold, which has so much incredible promise, which they enjoy so much, deepens human facility and network connection, and just makes our life so much better, also has the ability of making our society better. And I think that's a message we are taking to people. That's a message we're taking to decision makers. And we work on issues which are very, very diverse, but then interact with technology and law and justice. For instance, data protection and privacy. For instance, network neutrality, your ability to choose what you want to see, what you want to use. And on internet shutdowns, which are very common even beyond Jammu and Kashmir, to network access. And then free expression by itself, and disinformation, which gives us so much to think about just in terms of what we are reading and consuming on a day-to-day basis in terms of our online diet. So we hope to be that institution for India as the Internet Freedom Foundation, not the India Freedom Foundation, to help show that citizen concerns can be taken to policymakers and they can act upon it in a manner which actually fulfills our constitutional values.
Wonderful, Apar. I have a question, Apar. You have a very interesting journey where you worked for so long as a lawyer, and then you think about, sort about, it's a very, how should I say, a very traditional, career path. But to look at a problem and solve it, the use of innovative approach, it's take a very entrepreneurial way of doing that, right? So who has played a key journey, like as a lot of us, mentors are important people, our colleagues are important people. So in your case, I would like to understand who has helped you to walk that path when you were looking to start this up.
So this is there in my it's on the basis of reflection, and I'll be very honest. There are two basic key factors which helped me make this leap. The first is that it seems traditional that you litigate for a decade, you accumulate a certain degree of financial independence and freedom, and then you step towards something which is risky. And I would like to indicate and pause here and tell people that as much as the pressure to be an entrepreneur on you may be immediate in terms of a trigger, you can also assimilate skills working with conventional lines of profession, learning from the best experts and practices by working in larger organizations. Assimilate that. If you think you're not ready, choose the path which is right for you. Okay. The second is that who makes you chart that journey is quite often not somebody who's older, but is an ally, is a collaborator over a long period of time. Okay. And it's beautiful when that works out. And it's not like there won't be challenges. There won't be insecurities. There won't be shift in personalities. There won't be conflicts. There won't be truly what they call when people put together a band, artistic differences. Okay. But you have to basically make that effort of retaining the sense of that relationship. For me, those people have been my co-founders in the net neutrality movement in 2017, with whom I formed the Internet Freedom Foundation. When the first desire for me to step from a decade long of practice, which is going very well, and I was abruptly shutting it, which seemed like a very crazy idea, and still seems like that to me right now, if I just reflect back. I still don't know what to do my law books. They're still there. But I'm pretty much certain this is what I want to do. But even then, I'll just tell you, the people there said that, Apar, if you are serious about it, why don't you write what is your vision? come up with a clear operational plan. What will be your mission objectives, and what will be the strategy which you will use towards fundraising, operational hires towards the first year, and then much more towards the medium term of 1.5, 3 years. And I wouldn't be able to do it if I hadn't worked with so many diverse people over that course of time. So 3 things essentially helped me out here. One was that ability and experience I drew from working with a diverse set of people over this decade. The second were allies and trusted collaborators. And third were a very willing set of circumstances, because externalities need to support you. And this is the magic mix, right? You need to be at the right place in the right time, doing the right thing. If you're doing the right thing also in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it doesn't have a public need, for instance, it doesn't have a constituency, it doesn't have what they call in the private sector the right market fit. So in some ways, at least initially over these 2 years since I've been doing this, we have found the work that we are doing in terms of technology adoption, policy setting is the right thing to do, because India is right now passing through that moment.
Superb. I think you very well said that you need to have that market fit, and there's a need that you need to solve for a customer, right? Be it whatever, right? So thanks, Apar. Now I'll come to Prapti. So Prapti, your work revolves right now, like you said, you are in one of the remote locations in the country. So tell us a little bit more about, how do you empower communities, both socially and economically? And again, my same question to all the participants: what made you start it? What is your big why behind starting Aafaaq Foundation?
Thank you, Aashish, for that question, and thank you for having me here today. I think I'll try to answer the second question first. My journey started back in 2016 when I started teaching in a community in South Delhi called Sangam Vihar. I was a Teach for India fellow, and I taught a bunch of 6th and 7th graders. I think the 2 years I spent with them helped me identify my personal theory of change, and helped me articulate what is my Indian dream. And I found out that I wanted to be a teacher for life. And the 2 years that I spent with them, and the 2 years I spent in the community talking to every adult around them, I figured out education is going to be a key role to take India forward and just to enable people. I think the more time I was spending on ground, the more time I spent traveling, I figured out that something which is my state of flow is just being around people, and save our service as a value that I held really close to me. I was also trying to figure out what is that one thing that breaks my heart, and that I found out was just the inaccessibility of opportunities and exposure out of sheer identity. In Delhi, it was just most of the kids that I dealt with were migrant people coming from UP, Bihar and around. And then on my travels to interiors of the country, I was figuring out just out of sheer remoteness and inaccessibility, a state which appears to be very prosperous on papers, and there's this one district which is not doing that great, and 3 blocks of that district which are not at par with what's happening in the remaining parts of the same state. I think I was lucky that I was traveling along during that period of time, and I think I was lucky enough to just to be I sort of actually happened to be at this place, and I was invited by this community because I was spending a lot of time at a retreat here, and then I was invited by this community. And in 2016-17 I sort of started having establishing this touch. I was frequently visiting this place, and what I was able to draw connections between was my theory of change, what I wanted to do with teaching, and what was lacking here. I think the connections were very much visible, but I think as a lot of you mentioned and my co-panelists mentioned, just with like a lot of research and mentors on board, I figured out that education is not going to be the only way. And this actually, this conclusion, I arrived at this conclusion after like a lot of mistakes, I would like to call them, and I learned from them that education is not just going to be the only thing. You will have to do something like cross-sectional, intersectional, that will take care of the self-sustainability of the community, and you will have to empower the ones in the community. Those were my learnings when I was working with that community in Delhi. I think that is when I and my co-founders and a couple of friends, we sat down, we discussed about, okay, we will take care of education, but we'll also take care of how do we enable other members in the community. So something that we are experimenting here is we are working with the youth in the community and women of the community towards chalking out better livelihood opportunities. And in the schools, we are working towards bridging foundational literacy and numeracy gaps for the same communities. So that is sort of my journey. It's just like very short, but yeah.
No, absolutely. I think that's quite a journey, and I see there's a common sort of like Aniket was also a Teach for India fellowship. So I think, like Antaraa mentioned, experiences are important, and it could be through these fellowship journeys as well. There's so much that you get to learn when you're part of that, and there's quite a lot of them. Those are there. Okay, so now I pass on to Nilanjana for the next half, which will be the question and answer. And I could already see the questions are flowing in. So I request all the audience, all the participants to feel free to use the chat function or the Q&A box to put your questions. We have about 20-25 odd minutes. Nilanjana, over to you, please.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much, Ashish and everyone, for a very insightful session. We'll quickly move on to the question. My first question is to Apar. So Apar, what is the role of human-centered design to create a digital movement with constitutional liberties, especially when we talk about social innovations?
I think human-centered design is towards enabling what are constitutional values which are structured, because that gives us a very good perspective. So you can just look at the preamble in terms of how it articulates those values, the role of the state, the role of the citizen, the role of the fairly political environment that enables both a high degree of human freedom and liberty to do the kind of things you would like to do, but also then enables that basic level of support for you to reach that. And I think human-centered design would mean in this context, for instance, basic issues of ensuring that technologies does not end up harming people, does not end up excluding people, and is inclusive and leads to a much more equitable future. For instance, internet access is still not there in close to 25 to 24,000 villages all across India. This is because of a lack of network infrastructure. How this visits people much more particularly is in terms of them not be having the facility itself of knowing that this transformational technology exists, and especially in times of COVID, not being able to avail several such things which rely on the internet to overcome these barriers from education to health. The second instance may be there for populations which are much more centered towards metropolitan areas, where we are seeing the rise of what are policy conversations around smart cities. Now, do these smart cities account for or are built towards the needs of people across various economic and literacy levels, or they are accounting for the design of the administrator, right? And there'll be different priorities according to them and weighted along to them. So I think human-centered design is the way we think about it, which is essentially grounded in values and our understanding towards that vision, which leads to a degree of fulfillment, equity for all people in India.
Okay, thank you, Apar. Thank you. So I just want to, on this note, I just want to understand from Prapti that Prapti, you work in one of the remotest locations in the country and trying to create an autonomy. What kind of challenges you do I mean, you have faced due to lack of digital connectivity in the rural and distant remote areas of the country?
Thank you for that question, Nilanjana. I think something that has definitely helped us is we just have Geo available as a network, and that has helped us greatly. But like a lot of our customers, a lot of our beneficiaries are still not able to access. And I think the first time we like this was brought to our face when like we couldn't connect to the children that we were teaching during the lockdown, and for like straight like 4 months there was no way we were able to connect to them. We were not expecting the patrolling to be strict, but it was. But uh, I think something that is working for us right now is just like connecting, just like forming champions in different communities, and identifying people who have that access, and making those peoples reach out to other people in the communities. So that struck to us as a structure, and we established that. But otherwise, like, because it's a remote location, there are things that work. We were already working remotely with like our mentors, with like our partners, with like people who have been our guides. But I think like it's been an ongoing thing. We have been able to raise funds where we are able to provide devices to people. But I think other than that, people have only come to our rescue rather than technology. So we have relied on our people, and that has all that has helped us to reach most beneficiaries possible.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Prapti, for answering this such beautifully. Now, from there, Aniket, what is your take? I want to understand, and also there is a question of how you ensure your app ensures that the benefits reach the most marginalized people, be it rural area or as Apar also mentioned that the internet is not accessible to everyone and it's very difficult. So how does Haqdarshsak as an app now, take up these challenges?
So we essentially are a product company. We work in building a simple mobile platform to help people understand what they're eligible for. It's a rules engine. There are three principles through which I think in the last few years we've been able to understand the different geographies. We today work across 19 states. One is that technology alone can't solve the problems at the grassroots. Technology is essential to for scale, but what in India at least works is an assisted tech model. Use technology to help people on the ground who can then be champions. So we work on our delivery through a women entrepreneur model. So we train women Haqdarshaks who are women in the community who are members of self-help groups. So we have trained over 6,000 of them. And that's how we've been able to solve the issue of access, digital literacy. So make that one entrepreneur per community who can then ensure that more access and information reaches in the community. So that model has, as of now, worked for us. And for to achieve that, some of the basics I think that need to be followed are that today a lot of the content that we are all creating needs to be in local languages. So at Haqdarshak, all our content is in 15 local languages. It needs to be in very easy to understand information. There is a lot of, again, what I said earlier in terms of assisted tech. There are a lot of platforms which are already there, whether there are easy to understand chatbots, video, other assisted tools that can be used to enhance that experience for a first-time user. So thinking about that first-time user, their personas, how do you ensure that they get information is very important. But like I said, technology is an enabler in the community, and it is extremely essential for scale. But it is not. You cannot use the kind of communities we all are trying to reach. You cannot reach there with by just using technology. You need to ensure that there are people trained, and it is in collaboration with different organizations that are already working on the ground.
Okay. Thank you, Aniket. Antara, the next question is for you. What exactly is civic technology and what are the various startup opportunities? Like what are the different what are the different enablers we can use in this context and in this space? I would really like to know it from you.
Sure. Thanks, Nilanjana. So, civic technology is essentially a lot of the work that each of us is doing would perhaps fall into that domain. It is a term that is used to describe technology that actually helps aid government functioning or helps aid citizens' engagement with governments. So, it's very rooted in the realm of what we would understand textbook wise as civics, but essentially a lot of our work would fall into that domain. There are multitude of opportunities for organizations working or individuals looking to run businesses in civic technology. Latest reports by Omidyar Network and others have actually said that there are between 480 and 500 civic technology organizations in India itself, right? So there is a huge space where we can act. It comes through multiple lenses. For example, there could be organizations that are working like Haqdarshsak, there could be organizations that are working on solid waste management, there could be organizations that are working on different social or civic issues, be it like reporting of complaints or other things using technology as a lens. So I think civic technology in that sense is a new and exciting space, and there is a lot that can be done there as a non-profit or as a for-profit organization.
Okay. Thank you, Antaraa, so much. Apar, my next question is to you. So, like from the previous two discussions, we have been listening about technology, and also like Aniket mentioned, he has built up a women entrepreneurship model. So, what do you think about the gender gap that exists in using digital platforms? Like massive gender and digital internet gap exists. So, does bridging this gap, figuring out this issue, is that something you are also working on?
I think there's a huge amount of vacuum, firstly, with respect to how telecom policy is addressed. It's a technical area which is dull, dry, obtuse. Secondly, there's a lack of capacity and interest by people. They don't see value in it, engaging with it and breaking it down, communicating it to everyday people. And the third is that the research around it is too expert-led. So the conversation is always at a very high level. It's not actually within people itself as much as people are an inherent element of how it impacts them. Keeping this larger environment in mind, let us account for that there will be existing deprivations of assimilation of technology within gender, caste, economic, and social groups, even due to economic criteria. And these deprivations will result unless factored within the policy design by itself. And does policy design accommodate for it right now? I would say no. For instance, most people would not know that the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India is at present doing a consultation like it does to make recommendations to the Department of Telecom. It's already getting boring. It's already getting complex for people as I say this. But yeah, so it's doing a consultation, and today's the last date for a roadmap on teleconnectivity and access. And you know, the thing is that today when devices, etc., are being purchased, the first people to grab them will be a person who will be privileged within that group. And of course, there'll be people who will be having very important interventions, such as Aniket is doing through private initiative, as well as collaboration with governments. But we also need a much broader scale policy around this. Are we doing enough at the Internet Freedom Foundation? I don't think so we are doing enough. Our own trustee board is principally male-led. The organization and my gender identity and sexuality is also cisgender het man. But what do we have is the opportunity towards the future in changing these things. For instance, my colleagues principally are young women as well as non-cisgender at least. And also in terms of how we are looking at issues, it's much more through a social lens, listening to constituencies. For instance, the work that we did for bringing connectivity and highlighting the lack of network access due to absence of proper infrastructure in the Andaman and Nicobar was on the basis of going out and reaching out to people, more often not men, and what impacts it has on them. I'd like to say there's a lot to do here, and I think so we are not doing enough. But I'm hopeful that we are able to integrate this not only in terms of our work, but also in terms of our leadership at Internet Freedom Foundation as we go forward.
Thank you so much, Apar, for explaining it this correctly. I'm sure it has answered, like, clear the doubts that the audience has. My next question is for Aniket. So Aniket, so the schemes, so I have also, worked a little bit. I've referred Haqdarshsak schemes for my work also, like being at Hill High. We are also doing a project on social security schemes. So, but more than that, from the audience point of view, and my question also, I want to understand that all the schemes are available online. Why do you, what came across you to feel that a technology platform is completely needed to work on just the social security or welfare schemes?
So I think government schemes is one of those work where you don't have control over the supply, right? Like when you work in a services company, you usually have control over supply. Here you don't. If the government is going to change tomorrow, you don't know what schemes are going to come in, if there's going to be re-election or a finance budget. So I think just the number of schemes that are there out there, unique schemes in a country are about 2,000. Overall, there are about some 11,000 government schemes across state, center, municipal corporations. And just even if you talk to a government official on ground, it is impossible for them to know what scheme someone is eligible for. So just the sheer volume of the problem. Also, in terms of, like I said, in India, about 85 crore people still have ration cards. We have, in our assessment, about 100 crore people who are dependent on some kind of government document or scheme. So just the sheer scale of it requires technology, but the ground execution necessarily doesn't. So that's where I'm saying the differentiation is. You need to use technology for process. You need to use technology in getting the data, understanding and improving your process. But the ground execution, if you really want to reach that bottom 30%, 40%, needs to be done by people. So that's where at least I saw that there is a huge opportunity as well and a gap. Also, I mean, just to clarify, I think of all the people that are out there, we do see that at least 60% people are covered by the government. So it's not like 100% coverage is going to be done by the private sector. But there is a huge number. 40% of a billion people is about 400 million people, which do not get access to these schemes and services. And we saw that counter to the claims of the government. We saw this during COVID when, migrants didn't have ration cards. There were stranded people without food, without social security. Gig economy workers don't have basic life insurance, health insurance, whereas the government has schemes for them. So that's where I think our overall goal has come in terms of technology. Also, it enables us to be very market driven, which again, I think more and more civic society, civic tech, like Antaraa mentioned, and a lot of such enterprises need to be, because that's where end of the day you're going to be sustainable. After a point, you can't be dependent, and especially now with the new rules, you can't be dependent on philanthropy. So both CSR or FCRA. So I think it has to be more market driven, where again technology I think helps in connecting with other organizations who are doing similar work.
Right, and I think it also improves the awareness around the society, which is also a very important part in this whole process of welfare schemes and social awareness. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Aniket. My next question is to Prapti. So Prapti, so you mentioned that your organization has two pillars, which is education and livelihood. So the question is revolving around it, that the learning is certainly impacted due to lack of teachers, especially in the remote areas, and also due to digital divide. What kind of innovations can help address these, and what are your expectations in this?
I think definitely I would go back to what Aniket mentioned around how technology is definitely an enabler. But something at Aafaaq that we're trying to work is identifying again like local youth, girls, boys from the community like bright promising youth from the community whom we can train and coach them and place them as teachers or supports to teachers in those schools. I think where remoteness helped us for the first time was in the pandemic, because we are already like very sparsely populated, and we were able to form smaller groups and we were able to work around with kids. I think because ours is a very community centric model. I am the only one, like our team, core team comprises of 6 people. 2 of us are outsiders, but 4 people are from the village. And those are our school and community facilitators. Those are our youth facilitators who are getting to work with kids and youth and women of the community on a daily basis. I think that essentially helped us bridge the divide that would have existed if I was working directly with the kids. But I think because through the pandemic also, they were on the ground, they were connected to the kids, at least to the kids who were living in the close vicinity, and also to the kids who were a little far. I think like to me, like what, and we were discussing this as a team also, I think again, like I would want to bring this down to people. And because people from the community, there are people who hold the vision for the village, there are people who would want to dedicate themselves. I think pandemic did not affect us a lot that ways. We were able, like the funds were cut and all that, but I work with the community uh, uh, happened because there was no one who was traveling, or like there was no movement involved, just because it's a very community centric model and everyone is from the community who's taking the charge and working on the model.
Okay, that's really great. One way it's good for your organization, but yeah. I mean, also, I mean, I'm sure much more developments and much more process will be keep coming up to even strengthening a community-based model as well. Okay, my next question is to Antara. What are the various funding opportunities available in budding entrepreneurs in the space like civic technology?
Sure. Thanks, Nilanjana and Aisha, for that question. I think there are a lot of opportunities available. I think you're not just looking for opportunities in the civic technology space. You're also looking for opportunities for early stage nonprofits. You're looking for opportunities for different roles or different personas under which one organization can fit, right? So I think there are actually a myriad of opportunities, more so over the past, at least in my experience, over the past 3 to 5 years that have come up. There are a bunch of very strong incubators that are focused on supporting your work. It could be the Encore incubator, or it could be any other incubators that are around. So I think that base step is made fairly easy now. But the challenge and the big thing to really kind of think about is how you communicate your vision and what you want to do. That is much more challenging perhaps than actually getting a grant or having access to a platform. The platforms are there, but to really be included there, how do you demonstrate that you are the right person to do this job? That becomes very crucial, and I don't think I've mastered it yet. I think I'm still long ways on the learning process of that, but I would say focus more on that, because the opportunities will come up, but that strength that you build within your organization, that capability that you build within yourself, that actually takes a lot more work than the opportunities.
Thank you so much, Antara, for your answer. I think we can, close the session now. I'm really happy, seeing such wonderful answers and wonderful doubt clearing session. So it was really great to have you all here. And now I'll hand over to Aashish to, go ahead with the closing part of the session.
Sure. Thanks, Nilanjana, and it was very well, answered by all the panelists. I can still see a couple of questions coming in, but in the interest of time, I would like to go back to all the panelists, and before we conclude, request you to share some parting thoughts or any call to action that our viewers, that our audience are watching right now can take back, and that kind of helps them to work on their ideas, or if they are thinking about looking at a problem, so then they can think it better. So any like call to action which you think kind of really help our audience before you leave. So who would like to go first? Should I start with you, Aniket?
Yep. So I think right now all I would say is it's one of the most it's one of those times which is the largest opportunity for our generation to come and work on civic issues, social issues. COVID has set us back as a country by a decade or so. So it's a huge opportunity. It's going to be very challenging with the PM Cares fund and FCRA laws. Getting funds is going to be tougher in the ecosystem for social enterprises. At the same time, I feel it's going to be one of the most, like I said, biggest opportunities. So call to action would simply be go out there. There are a lot of young organizations, entrepreneurs doing some fantastic work. Try and work with them, refine your ideas, and I think jump into it. There's no easy way to do this. You have to be ready for failures. You fail, you try 10 things, you fail at 9, you do one thing well. This is how it is. But I think, like I said, it's the absolute best time to kind of do something if you have something in mind in terms of solving a problem.
Thanks. How do you turn adversities and opportunities? Thanks, Aniket. Antaraa, what about you?
Thanks, Aashish. I don't know if this is an immediate sort of call to action, but it's something that I think is really important. Just persevere. There are things that'll work, won't work. You'll learn new things will change. But as long as you have perseverance by your side, you're good and golden. You'll make it work somehow. So I think anybody looking to kind of innovate and be in this space or any space really, perseverance is so important. So stick to it, and it'll be a fun roller coaster ride.
Super. Very, very important. Apar, over to you.
So the internet completed 25 years of public rollout on August 15th, which was our Independence Day. And what's important to consider is that, setbacks which are happening right now, we are in the midst of a pandemic, things seem very, very tough, yet we're all smiling. So we are doing that because we have a hope towards the vision of a future that is better. And the internet may seem like one transformational place where it can happen. The Zoom call is happening there. It will make sure that all your curiosities, your learning is fulfilled. So make technology a core part of how you understand and implement your work, but also look at the larger policy space, which will quite often determine it, connect with other people. And I'd just like to say that in terms of a call to action, keep reading widely. That's what's helped me look beyond the law and make this discovery and leap in my life. And it's always open to you when you feel that degree of comfort. You will feel a degree of discomfort actually rather than comfort when you do it. And that's also one way to know that you are maybe on the right path. It's when you feel excited about something is when you're taking a risk sometimes, but do think about it and consider before taking it. I wish you all the best, all of you.
Thank you, Apar. That's very nice. Prapti, over to you now.
I think +1 to Antaraa around just perseverance, and I think because I have taken those calculated risks and learned from them, I think the question that has kept me going is just like asking myself again and again, am I doing the most important thing I could be doing right now? I think I would like to leave everyone who's attending with that thought.
Superb. I think I had really enjoyed moderating and being part of this session. It was a wonderful discussion. And I'd really like to thank all our audience and the team at UNDP for organizing, and all our panelists for joining us. Before we leave, I just like to mention that Youth Collab's applications are open until 28th October. So I think there will be a link posted by our colleagues in the chat box. So feel free to check that out and apply. And my parting thoughts, as an entrepreneur, something that helps always me is there is, like Aniket says, that there's no adversity that cannot be turned into opportunity. So while you think that we're going through really crisis, it's also allowing us and exposing us to some really untapped opportunity which we never thought about. So really, three things that keeps me going is always have big ideas, something that you every morning you wake up and you feel like, wow, I want to do this, and this will create a real impact. So have that big idea, a vision that moves you every day. Second is take small steps. Don't think that, oh, one day I want to do something, settle there and big, like, and then I'll start up. If you feel like you want to do something, so like Apar said, start reading about it, like Prapti said, and Antaraa mentioned about like doing like experiential learning programs. So that's also a way to getting there, right? So it's not like starting your business right away, but kind of gaining the experience. So take baby steps and act now. So don't delay action or sleep over it or think over it about someday. So these are the things that has always helped me. With that, I think it's time to say a goodbye and good night to all of you. Please take care and stay safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.